right, now that we got all the AV stuff going, we'll start our meeting. First off, our mayor comments. The only comment I have, Brittany and I both received an email this week from the league, Mickey Shields. There's a new bill. Anybody on any board, whether that's the city council, the library board, the park board, that has open meetings, has to go through an open meetings training before they're eligible to be on that board. They have to within 90 days of when they're appointed to that board. So that's something we just are kind of starting to see. They're sent out a time when they're gonna have a training, but they haven't told us, are they gonna have other trainings? There's gonna be, can you view of it and not have to go to it? Because obviously it's gonna be hard for everybody to meet one time. So we're still looking into that, but that's just something that's coming, that any boards we have now, it's an online thing, but it's like I think it's a live online thing, so.
Did you happen to mention whether or not they'll offer that training at the League of Cities conference? You know,
For
since that's
this thing or for something, anything else?
for the open, the meeting.
They didn't say.
Yeah. I assume it'll be discussed though, for sure.
Yeah, cause it seems like I do recall taking something like that when me and Phoebe first started. We went over to Upper Iowa and Fayette and
Yeah.
I do recall
I think that
something.
was almost more voluntary, or this is now, you have to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And maybe it was a have to for city council, but now it's all the board, library board, park board, all boards have to do it.
Elected or appointed officials. it says.
The one question I would have is the board of supervisors were given the training on the open meeting sunshine law. There is almost an hour and a half or a video that's on the county website. And I would be curious, because that is from the folks at the Des Moines level that take in all complaints, they provide the training. If we view that, does that suffice?
And that's what we have to find out, because they just sent it to us, said, you have to do this, here's when the training is, August 24th, or whatever the date was.
I have to keep all the certificates because we'll be like audited over it basically, so.
But hopefully it's something like that, Patrick, where people can go do an online thing at their own leisure, but details are still to be determined.
Okay.
All right. Next up on the itinerary is the Lane Street Railroad Crossing closure discussion. I'll just start this out because John and Dan and I met with the Connects, and Chuck is on line. And then we also met with the railroad on Zoom, that yesterday, was that? And so we think we've come up with some progress in this situation, so. The progress that seems to be agreeable to everybody, and you guys can jump in whenever, is that the Lane Street crossing, we would close that crossing as the railroad has requested. The Connects were okay with that as long as we made the CN crossing, the Brackett Street crossing, available for semis. They said that would never be available for their lowboy semis, but those are only like 2 or 3 times a year. They could go around and come in on, out by Westwood Park and come in that back way on Kellogg. And that was fine with them because it was only like 2 or 3 times a year. But their regular semis, they get, 5 or 6 a week. And so they need to have a way to get those in. But if we were able to regrade that Canadian National Crossing, that would be okay with them. And then the question would become, does that little section in front of their building remain a city street, or is that their private area? We did talk about, and again, we talked to the railroad, the Shelby Street, which is there now, which is owned by the railroad, but we are able to use it, would remain the same as it is right now. There would be no changes in Shelby Street, so it'd be just like so you could still get access coming up. I'm guessing that's probably why you were one. That would remain, with this, it hasn't been passed yet, but with this agreement, that would remain a street all the way up to TNC Machine. And then the only question would be was that little, because he was talking about if his trucks come in that way, then they have to back up and to get to his loading dock area, and if he could change that to his liking, it would be easier, and so that would be a point of discussion, but I think we said that would probably be something we could figure out. With that crossing closing, we would still get the $100,000 from the railroad and $100,000 from the DOT. That would allow us to, number one, pay, because it would be our cost to do that grading. That's not, the railroad is not gonna do that. But we have a call, we're actually, tomorrow, I think we're meeting with this CP and a CN both to see how that grading would work out, who would do it, who would pay for it. But I think it would be a city cost to do that. But we could use some of that $200,000 for that process. The railroad said, you know, because we had planned on maybe using that money to upgrade the Kellogg Street crossing and the E Street crossings, that $200,000. And so John asked, well, what would it cost to do those? And the railroad said, well, the cost for the railroad part of it would be about $100,000 for each crossing. But our share is 20% of the total project cost. So for those two crossings, it cost us $40,000 just to repair it. Now, the city work, as far as streets and stuff, but again, that's paid for 60% by the DOT, 20% or state of Iowa. 60 state of Iowa, 20 railroad, 20 city.
Okay, I thought it was 60 railroad, 20 DOT.
I did too, but I have it written down that it's,
Okay,
that it's 60, because I thought, at first I thought that too, but then I looked at my notes and it says, but anyway, our part is 20.
20%, yeah.
Somebody else is covering the other 80%. So we could use that money to do this regrading of that Bracken Street crossing. And we still would have money to use those other ones, because those would be, I think he said in summer of 28,
27 and 28.
27, 28.
But 27 would be the earliest possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we decide to do this crossing closure, the Main Street crossing and that closure would happen next summer. He said during the, because it's from when we have an agreement, it's about 90 days, 9 months.
9 months.
Until they can get all the permits and all the stuff ordered and all, because they are gonna order supplies to do it until they know that there's an agreement. So he said that'd be about a 9-month process, so we would probably be in spring, summer of next year when they would do the revision of the Grand and then the closing of the Lane Street. The other question we have had as a city is, well, now we'll only have 3 crossings. Is that gonna be okay for emergency access? And I think in the discussion is better to have 3 good crossings than 4 poor crossings. And so I think that's kind of where, you know, the discussion, and the railroad guys said, yeah, you know, people say, oh, no, we can't cross that. He said after a couple of months, people have figured out another way to get around, and it becomes, that's their new routine. I think the concern would be emergency vehicles, but the Kellogg Street crossing and the Bracken Street crossing aren't very amenable to fire truck crossings anyway. So, you know, I think the theory is better to have 3 good crossings than 4 poor crossings. There was a comment brought up by Mr. Connect of, if they close that crossing, would they think then they could go faster because there's no crossing there anymore? They said, no, that wouldn't be number one, because you got a crossing at Kellogg and a crossing at Grand, and you couldn't increase the speed and decrease the speed in such a small amount of time
I
anyway.
talked to the railroad personally, and that is not true. They definitely want to increase speed. I have talked to one of the railroad gentlemen that runs that section that runs along my house or my shop. And he says, yes, it is a fact that they do want to increase their speed
I don't think that's, I think,
because of production, because of the fuel, the thing that they're building out by tie-ins recycling is going to increase. They're getting ready to put 2 switches over on the backside of Connect's side, and they're putting 1 switch on our side because they're 2 different companies. So they have to work together with the influx of how much train is going to increase because of what they're building outside of town here.
yeah, and We talked to somebody who's pretty high up in the railroad, he said that would not increase, they call it track speed, not train speed, track speed.
But
Because
also,
of a diamond, he said, because even more so than the crossings, because of the diamond shape. of it.
Yes.
He said you can't increase,
Well,
you
because
couldn't
of the-
increase that speed because of that diamond shape.
cause the diamond is actually where the CN and the CP cross.
You know,
And what he was saying, from the railroad, they were saying that the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, they govern, you know, where railroads come together, there's some requirements of their speed.
I mean, we'll formalize that for sure,
right.
but what we were told was they would
That's
not.
what I've heard, so if
Yeah.
you've heard different, I would rather have both things be figured out than just one.
Yep, and we can talk, when we're talking to both railroads tomorrow, we can bring that up again.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I have. Do you guys have anything else?
That's the way I remember it.
We have, Mr. Connect online. I'd like to hear from him and his thoughts.
Chuck, you wanna tell us what your thoughts are?
Yeah, well, I guess, again, as I was stated before, first of all, we'd rather just leave it alone and not change it. Don't look like we're gonna have that option, but, yeah, as far as what we agreed to, that if you guys readjust the Brackett Street crossing, so we can get the semis in there, that'll suffice, as well as bringing the 2 to 3 times around on the Shelby Street, that'll work. But we had also discussed about vacating that road between us there. I hope that is still plausible, that we're gonna have, that'll be vacated so we can maintain that and take care of it like it should be. And then also is the traffic gonna be closed off as a through street there?
Yeah, I think that's the intention at this point, Chuck, that would be probably vacate that little section there and make that your property, I think was the intention that we talked about.
Yeah, but we retain an easement because we do have a
Yeah,
water.
'cause there's water that goes through there, but we would
Correct,
keep an
yeah.
easement to our utilities, but yeah, that way you could kind of not have public going through there and you kind of do that as you needed, as need be for your business.
Right. I just didn't know if that was gonna maintain an open through street through there or what, because I mean, that's the other, I guess, the interest that we have is if we're still having 100 cars through there a day or whatever, you know,
Yeah,
what's that looking like? What are we gonna do? We gonna close the street or what are we doing?
I guess I think that's our intent. I don't know that, you know, we haven't gotten to that far down, but I think from our discussion, that's the intent, is that Shelby Street would be closed at your facility.
I'm sorry, we have really poor cell service here, so I don't know if I lost you or not.
Oh, I say, the intent is that Shelby Street would remain open up to your property. And then from where your property starts on Shelby Street over to the crossing on Brackett Street and across that crossing would not be a street, and that would be closed as a through street.
Okay. All right.
If I could just add something, we might want to retain some space right there at the end for a
Turnaround.
potential turnaround. Because if a car
Right.
goes down, so they can get turned around and then drive back out.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
I would certainly wanna see us keep emergency access from the able to cross there. Because you
Yeah.
already said, you can't get across Kellogg hardly with a fire truck. The big fire truck.
right. That thing, I guess depending on how you close the street, if you put up blockades, it's not gonna have emergency access. If you put up a gate that the emergency vehicle would have keys to, I suppose you could, but I think that's to be figured out, I guess, at this point.
They're gonna run semis down it, they're gonna have something.
What's that?
They're gonna run semis down that street. They've gotta have somebody to do that.
Right,
Well, once the Kelly, or not Kelly, sorry, Kellogg Street crossing is improved, then would the, like, fire engines be able to go over it? Is that the?
I think that's the,
So
that's the intent, but then there's some question as far as. Which is that grade, are you gonna be able to make the grade such, because there's private property on both, and then. Are you gonna, most people not gonna be able to get in their driveway because the grade is too much, and Chief, do you have a comment on that?
So we've checked the fire truck, the largest fire truck we have is the aerial, and it clears it without any issue full of water. So we did not check Floyd's aerial, but they would probably come in from the north. More than likely, so just so you guys are aware of that on fellow.
When the fire chief was here, he talked about having a 1 inch clearance or 2 inch clearance. How did that truck grow since then?
We had about 5 inch clearance.
Now?
I'm the one who
Or
took the
before.
picture and measured it as he was driving it, so there might have been something lost in translation. We had more than a 1 inch clearance, so. So,
Can semis make the corner at Kellogg and Shelby?
it'd be pretty tight, but they can do it.
Are we going to, if we're gonna close the street at Connects. And we've got a commercial business on Shelby, how do you get a semi to turn the corner? I'd like to see us try that with some nice. 53 footers or something in there to see if it works first, or if we have to rebuild that corner. Because otherwise, it's not going to be effective, and even though the commercial building there, I'm assuming this gentleman is part of the commercial building there.
Yeah, Enjoy Recycle Pete, yeah, me and him are part owners in that business and operation there. We actually have the operation on the backside, we are currently sharing that space between my building and Chuck's building there as far as driveway space. The operation that I have going on has grown quite large since we first started. And we needed more room to process, so we're trying to utilize that building and, you know, try to keep it up and going as much as possible and, you know, till we get comfortable enough to be able to ever relocate. But as of right now, that's our means of keeping that business vital to the public and shutting that Shelby that runs alongside of our building. If that gets, you know, I wanna be able to maintain, you know, mutual respect with Chuck. He's been there for quite a while, so I don't wanna step on his toes. But at the same time, I don't know how I can adjust with anything as far as taking that road out without having to completely relocate my business.
The other part of it that building may not be doing the same business 3 years from now.
I own the building.
That building could be used for something else. It's not permanently locked
Right.
into this.
Exactly, that's where I wanna be able, I just wanna be here to kind of create something that's gonna be feasible in the long run. For Chuck, because he's been there longer than I have, and I don't wanna be in his way. But with some of those railroad crossings, it's definitely gonna put us in already a tight niche corner that we're already trying to share as it is.
I drive through that street often.
So the question is the turnaround for the trucks. I think it's a great question. And of course, if you shut off the other road, then the only way people are gonna get there. I suppose they'll make that adjustment like you would to get through Kellogg, to get there. But, yeah, there's gonna be around, is it 50 foot, 40 foot, somebody's
40 foot,
pick up cans and stuff, so.
And my question again is on the corner of Kellogg and Shelby, can a semi make that corner? And I
not coming from the railroad side, I don't believe they would.
I think it would be
No way.
very interesting.
Chuck?
Yeah, there'd be no way coming from the Kellogg side that semi can make that corner. It would have to come from the Oak Park side to make the Shelby corner.
Have you tried it, Phil, to know if they can make it?
I've had one of my Pepsi drivers take that ungraded road and he says he can do it, but it's a very, very skilled corner.
And that's just with a 40 foot, not a
Yes.
full semi.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
with a 40 foot. It's a very tight corner over there, and I mean, and another concern is the washout over there on that road. I mean, every summer we get rain, that water just completely erodes that road. And it's a safety risk if we keep running on all the time. You know, he's only gonna be using it maybe 2, 3 times a year, but our business uses it weekly.
I think it's something for the council to consider the long-term pieces of those. Because if you shut the road off south of Brackett, that becomes really a challenge at that point. Before we had talked about leaving kind of a farm crossing at the railroad crossing there, but apparently that's no longer viable.
I think if it's not closed completely, we lose $100,000.
Actually, two hundred.
$200,000 we lose, so.
And we lose reconstruction of the Main Street or the North Grand crossings, they're tied together.
Ultimately, what's been presented to us allows CPKC to close that crossing as they had wanted, but it also hinges on what Canadian National says about regrading the crossing at Brackett, right? And that's the meeting that's occurring tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm really appreciative of all the work that's been put in, and I feel like we're moving towards a plan that is workable. It may not be everybody's perfect plan. But I think what we really need to know what Canadian National is gonna say, because if for some reason they're like, no, we don't want that, we don't want you to do any regrading there, we don't. If they just say no, then we're kind of back to square one in a way, right?
And the Canadian Pacific
Or-
guy that we came to, who was gonna talk, knows Angelique, who's from the other railroad.
Okay.
Is pretty confident that they don't care what you do, as long as you don't affect the crossing.
Okay.
Now, we
Or,
don't.
or also what their,
Sure, but
long-term plan is, we had talked about that before, Dean, that if they decide that they want to close that crossing down the road, then we're really sunk in a hole then. So
Right.
I want to make sure that they're not having any intentions of closing that crossing.
right, yeah, you're right.
I think at the end of the day, whenever we get some answers from Canadian National and ask both railroads some of the questions we have, we still will have some things to figure out in terms of like long-term logistics and how everything will work moving in and out of that space. I'm really glad that with the work happy with the work that's been done so far, but and the update's really good, but we clearly have some more things ahead of us, and I think we're on a good path, so.
So I got a couple comments, go back,
We're right with you, Christopher. Go ahead, Matt.
if we go back, we did, as a council, look at gifting Team C Machine that road. I think that was one of Mr. Connect's questions. That we had. Two, the AIS really, and to Phoebe's point, I have more questions because it's contingent upon work being done to upgrade Brackett Street, but then we really don't have a time frame when that would occur or when the closing would cross. It would have to be in sync that for me to even think about that. The one thing that we haven't talked about, which came to light a couple weeks ago, is flooding. And when we had the flooding of last year, Mr. Connect, if you can recall that, was Brackett not passable at that point, and neither was Kellogg, correct?
I'm not sure about Kellogg, but yeah, Brackett is not passable pretty much every time we have a 2.5+ inch rain. It's out immediately for a day or better at a time, which definitely would be an issue. I'm not sure. I have to be 100% honest. I don't know about Kellogg.
So those are the again, some of my questions, I'm still, I guess, frustrated that, I think what the original discussion, we wanted to have a sit down. We did have the railroad and we did have the DOT on one of our first meetings when we discussed this issue. Since then, we've had no communication as a council. So I'm frustrated at that point. So to me, it sounds like we're circumventing the council
That's
to the
what
point
tonight's about.
where the
That's
staff,
what tonight's about.
we as a council are being asked to make a recommendation. We have more questions. So staff has to go back to the railroad and have those questions answered by being here. I just don't understand why the railroad is not here. It is the DOT on.
Yeah, the DOT
Wait,
would
I'll
ask
make
us
a
to.
comment. Yeah, I mean, I guess what other questions do you have, Patrick, that you would ask the railroad if they were here
I
tonight?
think what is, I'd like to hear it from both. There's a couple of open questions. What is the track speed going to be? And I'd like it documented. So if it does change,
He
it's.
said, like John said, that's regulated, they just can't arbitrarily increase their speed.
And what about future closing that we're not aware of? Again, my point is, we're trying to make a decision. I don't feel that we have all of the information presented. Keith made a good point is, long-term, it's not just about, the crossing itself, but it's more what's happening beyond that. Can a truck turn around at Kellogg and Shelby Street,
I guess the way I see it tonight is this is the update of our last conversation on the CP Casey closure, and we'll have to come back to it after Canadian National. And all parties involved meet tomorrow, and then we can start figuring out, like, we've got to know, both those meetings with the railroads have to happen, and then we've got to sit down and figure out what are our questions and what do we need to know going forward. So, I look at this as just an update, and then we'll plan to have another update possibly at the next planning session, depending on how tomorrow's meeting goes with Canadian National.
Say something, I forgot, but Christopher, Christopher's with the DOT, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I've been taking notes here as everybody's been talking. There's a few things I'd like to touch on if I may. You mentioned the Kellogg Street and the East Street crossing rehabilitations, and that the railroad's costs were about $100,000, so you would be paying 20% of that. I just want to make it clear that in that program, the railroad replaces the crossing structure, so that includes the rock, the ties, the rail, and then the surface panels through the roadway. And then the roadway authority, either with their own forces or they hire a contractor, removes and replaces the roadway approaches so they match the elevation of the crossing. So your contractor or your city staff, whoever is going to do that work, that cost becomes part of the total project cost along with the railroad's cost. So you're paying 20% of that total project cost. So if the railroad says it's 100,000, and say, your work is 100,000, now you're looking at 200,000. So your 20% is not 40,000 for the two crossings. It would be 80,000 for the two crossings. I just want to make sure those numbers are worked out right when you guys are looking at your budgeting. The other thing was, I can't speak for CN Railroad, but I can tell you that nationwide, low ground clearance railroad crossings are a hot button topic, and the Federal Railroad Administration is really trying to advance efforts to eliminate low ground clearance crossings. And so I'm confident that CN's going to be fine with regrading those approaches to that crossing. Obviously, if they're regraded and that is feathered out far enough, that may also help alleviate some of the flooding issues down on that northeast side. In terms of CN closing that crossing, the railroad can't just arbitrarily close a crossing. That's against Iowa code, especially on a public roadway. So, the only reason that lane the lane doesn't even have to close. We just can't put signals there. And because that has to be disassociated from the Grand Avenue crossing, we just can't put signals, and we would have to remove the signals. And of course, that's a downgrade in safety. Because the only reason that we funded Lane Street after we funded Grand was because when we went to do the diagnostic review at Grand, it was discovered that those two signal systems tie in together and you can't disassociate them. Kind of real briefly, so how the signals work is a low voltage circuit is sent down the track on one rail. And then when the train, it's the frequency is set high enough that it goes a certain distance out based on the train speed. And so when the train and its metal wheels get to that distance away, the metal wheels will complete the circuit, sending the electricity through the train and then back down the other rail back to the signal house. So that's what trips the lights and the gates. So in a rural area, it's really simple because that signal can go out. But when you get into a city, those signals, as they go away from that crossing, if there's another crossing a block away, they overlap, and then you have false activations and other issues. So instead of using that system, they just interconnect the bungalows, the signal houses together. So when the train comes, to the town or city, that first signal system trips, and then it sends a signal to the subsequent ones, letting them know that the train is coming, and then they initiate their signals as well. The issue here is that those two signal systems are talking to each other in that way. And so the only way to do Grand is to remove the signals at Lane so that the Grand Avenue crossing can send that signal down the track, and it's not going to interrupt anything going on at Lane Street. So I guess what I'm getting at is Lane doesn't have to close. We just can't have signals there. And I think it's the railroad's perspective that if we don't have signals there, then it becomes a more dangerous crossing than it already is. And so their preference is to close it. And that's why they're having a discussion. They're not just saying they're going to close it. The same thing applies for CN. There's no other signal nearby because that's a passively protected crossing anyway. There's no signal system there. So this same situation will not occur at the CN crossing. I hope that all makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
It enlightened me a lot. I actually have two questions for you. So per Iowa code, one of our options is to absolutely do nothing.
Is that true? I mean, we were told by the railroad that eventually those signals that are on Grand are getting old. And they're gonna need to be replaced at some point. So by saying we do nothing now, we're just kicking the can down the road till 2 or 3 years from now when they have to be replaced because they don't work anymore.
Yeah, and that's kind of a loaded question. So once the signal system is installed, the railroad is federally mandated to maintain that signal system. So right now, both systems are antiquated. So they're still talking to each other. The problem was when we funded the Grand Avenue crossing, that's going to be an entirely new signal system. The system at Lane is not compatible with that new system. So that's why we funded Lane to upgrade that as well. But then as everybody knows, the signals are in the wrong place. We can't put them in the right place per federal guidelines anyway. So yeah, down the road, if signal manufacturers are no longer supporting a lot of these antiquated signal systems and components, so at some point they're not going to be able to get parts to fix that, and then they're going to have to upgrade it. And that would be at their cost, but then we're in the same situation we are now. It's like it's not going to communicate with the Lane Street crossing.
So my second question, I apologize. I didn't mean to come across as a loaded question. I was asking for your opinion from a DOT perspective, but you had made reference at the beginning per Iowa code, we are not, from a city perspective, we are not required to close it.
No, that is,
Question number-
and I wasn't trying to be rude saying it's a loaded question. I guess what I meant was it's a little more complicated than being that simple. Yes, you can leave everything the way that it is. But at some point, that signal system's no longer gonna be usable because they can't get parts for it and they're gonna have to upgrade it and then we're back to the same spot. So you are correct. You don't have to do anything.
Okay. Second question I had is if the railroad, if those electronic pieces were removed, from a DOT perspective, what other options does the city have?
So, yeah, I think I mentioned this in the last meeting. Someone asked me, is the DOT saying that the crossing has to be closed? Again, it's not our road and it's not our railroad. We don't have any requirements in terms of downgrading safety. I know the Federal Railroad Administration wouldn't look kindly on that, but from the state's perspective, it's not our road, it's not our railroad, whatever the roadway authority and the railroad decide to do there, that's theirs. We would just have to change our state railroad crossing inventory to reflect that it's a passive crossing if that's what everybody decides to do.
In essence, that could be, like we discussed initially, that could be a four-way crossing.
I don't think the railroad would do that. There's a downgrade of safety. They aren't gonna downgrade safety. That's what they said to us at
That
the
is what they
speech.
said.
So we're not gonna downgrade safety.
I mean, all of these discussions that the city's been having with CPKC, and apparently CPKC's been speaking to CN, that's great news because we got to move forward with Grand before the funding expires. But I haven't been involved in this entire process. My goal is to just fund things to improve safety, whether we put signals there, we close a crossing, I have money to put toward that. And our goal is for, you know, to either have the safest crossing possible and leverage those funds to make that happen. So whatever you guys work out is up to you and the railroad, but I'll reiterate it like I have the last two times. You know, the clock's ticking on the Grand Avenue funding. And if we don't get it closed out before the federal funds expire, everybody's on the hook for the money they spent. So
Christopher, do you have a time what is our time frame?
yeah, so I have the spreadsheet here pulled up. Let me minimize your meeting so I can see it here. Let's see. So the federal funds expire on September 30th of 2028. But when I say the federal funds expire, not only does it need to be constructed, but it has to be final build, audited, and any audit exceptions paid back before I can close it out.
So when do we have to start for that all to happen by 2028?
Yeah, based on the timeframes for, you know, once we get all the cost estimates from the railroad and the city, which I think I have all that so far, other than the railroads. You know, we included all that roadway geometry changes to clean that all up, not just put in signals there at Grand. So I asked for some additional funding for that. When we sign an agreement and execute an agreement, that's when the railroad will feel comfortable ordering the materials. And there's only a certain number of signal component manufacturers in the country. So what we're seeing across the board with every railroad is 6 to 9 months for them to take delivery of those materials. And then they'll have to get their crews out there and do the work. And then simultaneously, you know, city will have to line up their contractor to redo all that roadway and curb work and sidewalk work and so forth. Based on previous projects, I would say that we should probably be trying to sign an agreement here early next spring if we can. That might keep everything on track, no pun intended, to get everything done in time before the funds expire.
So early next spring, so 6 months from now, basically.
Yeah, if we
6
can
to 8
sign an
months.
agreement for Grand in the next 6 months, I think we'll still be okay to meet the funding deadline in terms of how quick the projects progress.
Okay, thanks. I thought we were on a shorter time chain than that, but that's good to know. Thank you.
Absolutely.
One
Any other
question I
questions?
had,
Yep, go ahead, Chuck.
one question I had is, so the railroad has said multiple times that the new crossings couldn't be put in because they wouldn't meet the federal mandated whatever distances or whatever. But does anybody know what that actually is? I mean, the railroad's saying that, but does anybody know what that actual footage or what that actual issue is? I mean, is it as simple as a person being able to buy property from somebody or whatever to put the crossing back a little further, or you know what I'm saying? They got to put new ones in. And is it more just a case that the railroad doesn't want to spend the money more than the fact that the property couldn't be acquired to do that?
No, there are federal guidelines for the placement of the signals, the offsets from the edge of the roadway. When we were there, the existing signals are not even placed according to federal standards. And then we were looking at property lines and so forth, and they cannot be placed there where they're supposed to be placed. I mean, the power wires were another issue for their maintainers maintaining the signals. That's a whole nother situation, but that's for the current ones because they just, the way that they have to be placed on the correct side of the road, they're not even on the correct side of the road right now. It's not possible to place the signals there just based on the property lines and the fact that that parallel road is so close to the railroad tracks.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's curious.
Well, I mean, this would have been a lot easier if we could have just placed the signals. I mean, we do projects all over the state. We know that the same guidelines as the railroads use. They're all standard guidelines. When we got out there, we were like, well, I don't know how this is going to work.
Okay.
You asked for other questions, I guess. Is there any way we can get some kind of an estimate of all the cost associated with all this road work we're gonna be looking at? Cause I got a funny feeling it's gonna be a whole lot more than $200,000.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So is there, can we get some kind of estimates on that? So we have that when we get the final words from the railroad and everybody else.
The regrading of the brackets.
Grade bracket, Kellogg and everything else that's gonna be associated with these roads, so.
Bracket is a massive undertaking, and that sits in a floodplain, or part of that does, I think, doesn't it, John? Does that matter for what we're doing?
No, we can work in you can fill in the floodplain, you just can't fill in the floodway, but we're not in the floodway.
And Kellogg, if you go south on that crossing, I have no concept of how you're going to be able to make that a softer crossing than what it is. I pull trailer through there. I don't know if anybody else pulls trailer through there, but that's a nasty trip going across there. That's why I come up the one we're gonna close, because it's easier than that one. But going south, I don't know how anybody's gonna get the pitch right without getting into everybody's driveways, everybody's yards. And that's a big deal. So I would really love to see that same stuff, is how do we even start to get that in a way that makes sense? And again, I would certainly look at how to run a full-size semi around the corner on Shelby and Kellogg.
Absolutely.
Because if you've not done it, I would hire somebody just to pull in there and watch it, because if they're gonna tie up those streets for a long time, there's some safety issues with as many houses that are back in there. If we can't get fire equipment through there, but apparently the fire equipment was given to us in a different way than what it is today.
I just want to talk with Patrick, actually brought it up, he said he doesn't feel like he has all the facts. I think I'd be remiss in not saying this. Through my career, I've covered several accidents where people come down lane and then they go to get onto Shelby and they end up on the tracks. So that, I mean, for the intersection not being safe in that regard, we've covered several that have come down lane, think they're on to Shelby and actually end up on the tracks. So I guess I just wanted you guys to have that information. So.
Didn't we just pull a low boy off the track that blocked the street?
That was actually on the CN on bracket there.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time. They top end, they try to go, it doesn't even have to be a low boy. They'll top end over there. We've had, when the chicken plant was open, we had some even just their trucks that have storage down below, top end over there. So.
So to your point, I said I don't have enough information. I'll echo that again. I don't have enough information.
I just wanted you to have that bit of information.
Yes, and I appreciate that.
I didn't know if anybody had discussed the accident there at the intersection or the crossing.
To Keith's point, I, as a council member, I'd like to have that information on what that would look like, a full size, making that turn there. To Delaine's point, this to me is like a shiny object. It's a 60-20-20 split, so 20% for the city, the railroad would pick up 60%. But that 20% could actually be 1.1 million, it could be 1.4 million from the city. I would really need to know what our true cost would be, and then a timeline when that upgrade would be done to coincide with the closing. But to allow the low boys to come through 3 times a year. To Keith's point, we're gonna have to have likely emergency vehicles come through. And to Phoebe's point, I didn't take this as an action item. This is more of an informational update for us.
Just a workshop anyway, so we can't take action tonight.
Right. So I still have more questions and look for more information the next time we have the discussion.
John is working on a cost estimate for, at least for the Brackett Street crossing.
And a design, but we're gonna have to go, out on either end.
So that redesign, was that redesign for Brackett alleviate the flooding as well?
No.
Well, no, I mean,
We go with them down there.
could, we'd have to extend it farther. On the TC machinery side, see, we're kind of locked into, we have to get back down before we get to their overhead door there.
Okay.
So if you guys need, figure out like semi trucks and what it looks like I said, I have trucks that come in every week, I could set it up to where my Pepsi driver takes that Brackett Road.
Okay.
Just so you guys can see for yourselves how unmanageable it is if it's gonna be a weekly thing.
Thank you.
Yep.
And
Other
I'd have to reiterate too on Patrick's point about the flooding, and I apologize. I've never really, guess I just overlooked that, but yeah, every time we get a substantial rain, every time the ball diamonds flood, that street's closed off. So I'm not gonna be able to get any trucks through there every time it floods. And I don't know, we kind of need to find out what the Oak Park Street, forgive my, Kellogg or whatever, that street through Oak Park, we gotta see what that does under these rainy circumstances.
Giant swamp. What it always looks like is a giant swamp out there.
All right, any other comments? Sounds like we still have work to do, but we're moving forward. Good to hear Christopher say that we had 6 months for them. I was thinking we had 3 months, but might take, I hope it doesn't take 6 months to figure this out.
It
Should be a lot of workshops, 6 months. Other comments tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to point one last thing out. So we do these surface repair, replacement projects all over the state. A couple things I'd just like to point out about that is when the railroad replaces the crossing and they're replacing everything down to the hard pan, all the rock and everything. When they rebuild that in there, it's never going to be the same elevation. They cannot tamp the rock in between the ties to make it exactly the same. They can get it to within, a half inch or an inch, generally speaking. But that's why the roadway authority, after the railroad is replacing that crossing, they build back those approaches so that way they're the same elevation as the crossing to make it smooth. Another thing I'd like to point out is, so these are both 2-lane roads. An average 2-lane road crossing, the one council member there didn't know how much this would cost. Generally speaking, total project cost for both the railroad and the roadway authority is between 250 and 300,000, depending what part of the state and what kind of contractor costs are involved. So you're probably looking at 300,000 total project cost. At the most, you'd pay 20% of that.
Per crossing.
Per
You're
crossing,
talking-
correct,
You're talking E and Kellogg then?
correct.
I'm sorry, Grand and
No,
Kellogg.
no, Grand's being done in that section 130 project. And that's gonna be 100% paid for with the federal funds. The 60-20-20 program that the applications are in for Kellogg and E Street. That's the two crossings I'm talking about.
But that doesn't do anything with Bracken, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, Brackett doesn't have an application in there, and for Brackett, you know, we can replace the crossing, but we can't like build a whole new road to raise the elevation out there. I mean, we just don't have the funding for that. Typically, the approaches go out depending on the road and side streets and manholes and everything else. You know, we go and do an onsite to develop a scope of work before we, you know, get those cost estimates and draft the agreements. But I mean, generally speaking, the roadway approaches go out 60 to 100 feet.
Okay. Nothing happened for time. I think we'll get some more questions answered.
No, that sounds good. John's been in contact with me via email, so if there's any more questions, please feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. I certainly want to, you know, progress everything and make everything safe and give everybody peace of mind. I know this is an ideal situation for anybody, but you know, we certainly want to help the best we can and leverage the programs that we have to help out and make this work.
Thank you.
One more question.
I just wanted to say thanks for your thoughtful consideration on this. I mean, it has a big impact on not the prettiest area of town, but we're trying to do some stuff that helps the community. So thanks for thinking about this and working it out.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
All right, very good. Next up, we're gonna talk about some surface water concerns. John, you wanna lead this off?
Yes. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't go out that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you'll have to go out this
Tell him we
way.
can't go that way.
Right, it's loud.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry for that. Thank
Thank you
you.
for bringing that up.
Yeah.
The alarm, police will be here to pick you up if you go out that way.
thanks.
Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
John,
Okay, yes, so, Councilmember Starry, asked for this to be, you know, discussed again. If you recall, there were 3 locations that we, talked about. This been, well, several months ago now, but. So the 3 sites, it's, the first one is on Clark Street, just, right over here by, Branningham, just next to the, new Nyack building. And then, the second site is on Gilbert Street, there at the Sherman Creek Bridge. And the third site is there at Gilbert Street, about halfway up what I call the hill between, Glenwood and, Quality Auto. So just looking at those 3 sites. And the first site, there, you're on Clark Street by, the Nyack building. There is, if you call it, now a number of years ago, we did do a project. We replaced some curb and gutter. And what we wanted to do is try to work the project, you know, get the drainage off the road as much as we could, but without getting into actually reconstructing the intake, lowering the intake, doing a lot of street work. So there's still some area there that does still collect some water. I did do some survey shots, and it flows down the hill, basically from like a Hy-Vee entrance, it flows down. And then before it gets to the intake, it really flattens out. And there's actually an area there that we could either grind the gutter to you know, grind it like maybe 3/4 of an inch to get the drainage through there. Also, I know, when Keith brought it up too, this was before the street was, the gutter was swept, was clean. Now, when water flows downhill, you know, when it flattens out, what happens is that water's running and it's carrying sand, sediment, and then when it flattens out, the water velocity slows down. And, you know, all that sand and sediment drops out, and I think what had happened too was over winter, you know, this, area had collected sand and sediment, and it was exacerbating the, this problem of holding the water. So one thing would be to, one thing is just have this area swept more often, making sure that the gutter is kept clean. Or we could look at, maybe doing some grinding. The other option would be to, we really wanted to take a look at this, it would be to get in there, do some more major reconstruction, actually lower the intake to, make sure that we get good positive drainage to it. So those are some options there, and, I did include in the packet some photos, and you can see, the photo there, it's photo 1 on, at Clark Street. Now, this was taken after a rain event, you can see it wasn't right after the rain event, but the water is being held there.
Make sure we're talking about the same spot, John. This is not on the corner. This is 15-20 feet west,
Yes,
about halfway up that hill.
yeah, that's what,
Not halfway up, but a ways up.
in photo 1, you can see the intake is quite a ways,
Yeah.
you know, down there. This is
Yeah.
probably 50 feet or so
Yep.
away or west of the intake.
And the reason I bring this up is it's a safety concern for me. In fact, the last council meeting was why I really took impact. I was following a vehicle. It got to that spot, it swung into the left lane, and I've seen that happen a ton of times. Cause people, one, don't wanna drive through the risk of water, they're gonna get their cars dirty, but that's probably not all. You know, we teach people, don't drive through water. And that's what they've been doing. There's gotta be a simple fix besides, at least something besides tearing up that whole bottom of that street. And I don't think you're gonna be able to do it with simple cleaning, because this has been a problem for 10+ years, 15 years, off and on. It doesn't matter when it's not raining, I mean, it's not a big deal then. But this year has exacerbated that problem. And I don't want the safety to be there perpetually. I think it's time we stepped up to make it better, especially with the NIAC putting that kind of investment right next to it. That was a nice thing.
Yeah, so probably, you said, is there a simple way? Well, simplest, of course, would be first seeing, you know, if we just kept it clean all the time. The other item would be to do some grinding.
And that's what I think has to happen for the water to go downhill. I don't think cleaning will make any difference, but maybe I'm wrong. If it would have the last 15 years, we would have done it already.
Is there room to live at one low spot? Is there enough room to live it, to get greater start?
But no, if you lift it, then what's gonna happen, you're just gonna push the water up.
Straight
Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so is that,
That answers, that just
I
doesn't.
mean, does the council want us to do some grinding?
Where would you grind? Would you have to grind all the way up to the intake?
They're probably about 20 feet or so, you'd have to grind. And it's, you know, it's flat, that's the problem, it
Yeah.
is flat, it's not gonna take care of it completely. The way to really solve this would be to go in, you know, remove curb and gutter, rebuild the intake, get it set lower. But, you know, it's a matter of, you know, how much do we wanna do? Do we wanna do a little bit, see if it solves it?
What's everybody else's opinions?
To me, I guess I don't recall that much water sitting on the westbound lanes in Clark. To me, there's always seems to be more on the eastbound, on the Catholic Church side. Down in there, but
And I never noticed those. The westbound is the one that I've always noticed. Of course, part of it is I drove that to work for a number of years. Too. But it's always been kind of an issue. And I would love to see us just grind it or try something different, but maybe it's not worth the effort.
well, I, just like everything else, I think we need some estimates of the cost and options and look at it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, some estimates on cost, but also, you know, start with the simplest possible solution. Or combination of the two simplest ones, right, cleaning and grinding, and then see where that gets us. But know how much we're getting into first.
And part of that information or any of these on the master plan to be redone in the next 10 years?
No. Not on site one, no. So, well, in the meantime, yeah, I can work up some cost opinions for what we could do.
That sounds good.
The second site. This is there at the bridge on Gilbert Street. And now this is. Patrick, you mentioned the CIP, of course, you know, we do intend sometime, of course, it's funding is replacing that old bridge. And again, this is the old highway. And the old highway, you know, generally highways are flat. Cause you know, they generally shed water off into ditches and the, you know, the DOT probably at one time came in, put in curb and gutter. But of course, they were stuck, you know, they had to work with the longitudinal grade. Now, when we do replace that bridge is gonna be set higher. And we'll have to rebuild Gilbert Street, the approaches, and that's going to make that drainage a lot better. Really, you know, as opposed to, I mean, this would be to really take care of this, and you can see that the pictures, photos 2 and 3 shows each side of the Gilbert Street, and it's right there at the bridge. What we'd have to do is we would have to take out some curb and gutter, put in an intake, and put in some storm sewer pipe. It'd be a costly, in my opinion, it'd be a costly repair for, you know, it stays in the gutter. It's not a, you know, unless it's, you know, a huge rain event and we have problems all over that at that time, but in this case, it stays in the gutter. It's not affecting the travel lane. So it'd be a lot of expense for, until we actually are rebuilding that bridge.
This hasn't been staying in the gutter, John. It's been almost halfway across that lane, and it doesn't have to have a big event. And then when I look at that curb, I see a big chunk out of it. And I'm assuming either that was hit by a plow, or maybe that water sat in there long enough that it's frozen and cracked that concrete and it's gone. Are we talking about the same spot?
I know there's, as you get to the east of the Bayou Bend Golf Course entrance, there's an area in there where it was an old entrance, and has old driveway entrance, and that is settled, and it catches water a lot.
So it's a picture in the back of what you're talking about, Keith,
I can't tell. The picture's not that strong for me.
right by the bridge.
That sits right on a bridge. Why couldn't we just drill a hole and drain the water down below that, whatever's below there?
Well,
Without doing anything real fancy. I mean, it's simply an inch of, you know, a 2-inch hole would take a lot of water.
yeah, the north side is on the bridge.
Mm.
The south side is actually to the east of the bridge. Also, you know, you just drill a hole. One thing, you know, just a small hole is gonna plug. And, you know, any type of major work, you're not gonna wanna get into that bridge, because that's a concrete arch bridge.
You have photos of when the water was standing and you can see where it was. After the last rain, this is looking south. And it was past the bridge just a little bit. Is this the spot you were talking about?
Where's the chunk of concrete that's gone from the curb that there? I can't,
Right
yeah,
there.
I believe that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's halfway across the lane there, which we're forcing cars out toward the center, almost into the lane to avoid it. It's not so bad when it's wet, but it's a lot worse when it's icy and things like that.
It's where the crack goes straight across right there, like a little chunk of concrete.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna have, maybe we just letting it go replace it, so it's worse, but. It seems to me like there's gotta be something we can do that's cheap and easy, knowing there's drainage. There, it's not at the bottom of the hill, it's at the top of the spot. And maybe 1 inch isn't big enough, maybe it's 4 inches. And maybe that's not acceptable, I don't know.
As far as getting into the bridge itself, I'm not a structural engineer, but I would not get into that bridge.
Would there be any way to make a cut through the curb, get under the sidewalk on the bridge and run something to either the east or west end of the bridge? Dump it out on the side of the bridge, so it goes in Sherman Creek down there. So you're only replacing sidewalk and not bridge deck and roadway and everything else.
Yeah, you have to, and I've seen those before, you have a plate on the sidewalk. And those work well in the summertime. Spring, especially, when the snow is melting. Those get plugged up. So you would have, it wouldn't drain in this, in the early spring when there's, when snow and stuff is packed in there, and because those are one of the last things that melt. Also, it will fill up with sediment, so it'd be a, maintenance issue, and, the street department would have to keep it cleaned out.
Excellent.
We're just looking for direction though.
I think, we're looking to Elaine's point, what are our options, the costs associated to the options?
Yeah, and then we're gonna have to balance that out with what we know is gonna, like, we know we have to do something with this bridge in the future, and we've discussed that, so we have to. Kind of weigh that out too.
Okay. So options with costs, okay.
On the edge of the road at Gilbert Street, isn't there a intake down to halfway down the hill? I thought that was already put in.
I feel like we did something.
Are you talking up by Quality Auto?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the next, or one
Yeah,
of the
so-
next issues.
So the quality autos site, or I think we've taken care of that. We did do some minor grading and been watching that, and it stays no longer, the water that comes down, it's been staying off the roadway. So I think we've taken care of that.
It's much better than it was. From that first run, and that first run wasn't remarkably expensive to do, it was just more understanding it. And taking care of it.
There's still water that comes on the road. If
Right.
it's raining hard enough, there's water that comes on the road from that deal, but it's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah.
Because it was really bad for a long time.
Yeah, I feel like that one improved. A pretty decent amount.
Okay, so just to summarize this, and sites 1 and 2, we'll continue to look at that. What we'll do is come back with some actual options with costs.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right, thank you.
thanks.
Bridge ballards.
This is one I asked.
We skipped
Skip.
6 times.
Sorry.
Oh. Skip that one, didn't I? So we thought we had, in talking to Chief and Keith at the last meeting, we thought we'd kind of resolve this, but then on the form that we set out at the last meeting, then somebody came in and talked about notifying people, and so we just want to get because the form still says you have to notify people. Want to get something figured out so that we don't have different answers for everybody that comes in the door.
And we approved two without anybody being notified, it just said we'll notify it later. So, yeah, clarity, I think, important.
Yeah, and I also think we've created an issue where we've requested that people get those street closures in earlier. And they've been doing that, but then I also understand their point that, well, if I notify them you know, 6 months out or 4 months out, people are gonna forget. So I understand why they're saying we're gonna notify them as the event gets closer. But I do think we just, if my 2 cents is that if we're gonna say, yeah, it's fine if you notify them as it gets closer when we approve it 4, 5, 6 months out, then that question number 5, what is the purpose of it even being on there, you know, or do we ask them simply, how do you plan to publicize your event so that neighbors know that it's occurring, you know, and we've talked, I think, about how some of those annual events or events that become annual, people always know. So I don't know.
Well, I think I was remiss in this because I remember the whole conversation we had. It was a pretty long one and we talked in length about this and about whether they should have to sign a sheet, whether we should notify them, how we're gonna notify them. And I thought we sort of settled on that we were just gonna notify them through the internet, however we're gonna do it, through Facebook, through the media, through online and everything else. And I left 5 on, I just had not taken it off. And I guess if that's still the direction we're looking, because remember we talked about, do we want to have them sign a sheet? Do we want to have them go to every business? Or then it became, you know, it's too arduous to go to every business when you're closing down the entire, you know, Main Street down. We talked about that. So, and I think it's my fault. I apologize. And so they haven't been checking this well. And I agree with Keith. So if you want to, I can just take it off and then, or just change that to how have you notified the public?
I would just take it off.
Just take it off.
Just figure that these guys are gonna notify. I mean, we are, 30 years ago, it was easier.
Right.
Just had a few businesses, you could walk to the door and let them know. But we've got people living in apartments, you know.
And you
That
brought
kind of
it
a
up.
rehash of what we had before was how do you actually do it in a way that everybody knows? But now we've got Facebook, we've got everything else. So if it just comes off, I think it makes the process better. And for people doing this, they're gonna want their event to be successful. You know, they're gonna push it in the paper, we're gonna put it on Facebooks.
And we could even, you know, if we wanted, we could put it as a reminder, but not a requirement at the bottom that, you know, please be sure to publicize your event so that any business or resident potentially affected would have, you know, reasonable ability to know that it's occurring, you know, something less wordy than that, but you know
Yeah,
what I
just
mean.
please notify all affected properties.
Or not even like just like publicize it in some way, you know, and I think that the events that we have downtown are really well publicized. I think that people would know that they are occurring. But just as a little addendum, a little reminder, you know, be a good neighbor, publicize your event so that people know what's going on. But not as a requirement that you have to individually notify everyone so that it's less onerous, but still Midwest nice, right?
I really like that approach. I think it's successful for the event and it's equally good for the people around it.
Yeah.
My notes from the last time Mark Wicks was here, Chief, you were here, we had a very long discussion on notification, types of notification, how to notify. Are you hitting everybody as far as the notification goes? I was awaiting a follow-on meeting to discuss if we even do that, because one of the action items that Mark Wicks was going to do was reach out to neighboring communities such as Clear Lake, towns our size, smaller, a little bigger, that have a lot of events. And do they even do it?
So I reached out to a couple, Patrick, and they don't.
Yeah, so
No.
that's what I was waiting on, was the follow-up, is do we even have to do that? Or if, as to Keith and Phoebe's point, is social media covering our basis on that? So,
And a lot of these you guys never see. I sign these all the time because John sends me that, hey, somebody's doing sewer work up on 13th Avenue, they gotta close the street and everything else. So part of this form, you see down at the bottom, it says fire department, ambulance, and the street department, is I send it out to them so that they're aware of it
right.
also. And those are really small closures. So I'll try to word that at the bottom where we publicize it, just so the people that are affected by it know. In a way that it may not be an event, I mean, get your sewer fixed is not a nice event, but, well, I'll put that on the bottom, if you guys are good with that, we'll take 5 off and. Probably could have avoided this if I would have taken 5 off after our discussion, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else you guys would like changed on there? So.
I'd like to comment on this.
Go ahead, Ryan.
With how it's been on there for years in the past and everything, I believe it's on there so affected properties have the opportunity to come before the council when the request isn't being made. And now you're taking that away from the property owners or residents to have a word in this ahead of time.
I don't see it that way. I see it as any time that a citizen within the community has an issue they want to address for the council twice a month, there's a 5-minute period where we get very little to zero input during the public comment period. Or even when we're discussing the event as a whole.
And historically, these were actually put on the council agenda, when Trudy, came, and she thought that you guys should be aware of them. So you guys are aware of the larger ones, but historically, otherwise, they were never even brought to the council. Because Mark would come and ask for a parade, which has to be signed by the chief of police and the mayor. He'd ask for a parade permit, and that parade permit would obviously show that that road would then be closed for safety during that time. Or he'd come and say party in the park, so. There are things that the council has seen, I mean, fairly recently, but.
So prior to that, none of these came before us because it really, on the paper, it only requires your approval, correct? And then who needs to be notified. So it's, unless there's something else in like, or code or whatever, doesn't require our approval, does it?
Right.
It's a courtesy.
That's the question. Do we even approve these, or does it just the chief of police that approves them?
Or in the code right now, it's me, which we could change if you would like.
Well, I'm not saying we should change, I guess I'm just asking, are these
Yeah.
something that should come before the council or not? These street closings. Dan, do you have any experience in that?
Bigger ones, in my experience, always went to the council. But like you say, you have the day-to-day ones. Obviously gets pretty onerous to, and if you're gonna close a lane or, even close a whole street to drill across it,
Like the parade, to me, is a different set, because that does impact so many places around town. I think that's a good one, because if nothing else, it gets reported in the paper and everything, it lets more people know about it. But again, when it's a single block or somebody's had a block party in their neighborhood over the 4th of July or something like that. I mean,
It serves a point too, if the larger ones are on the agenda to be discussed. It gives a citizen ample opportunity to see that. And come before the council if they have an issue.
Yeah, because being notified in advance doesn't tell you on what date it will come before the council. You would still have to be informed on, looking at our agendas, and that would still be happening for those larger events. If they're still gonna be on the agenda, someone would still have the opportunity to say, oh, hey, that street closure is by my house. I wanna come to a council meeting and discuss that. So I don't think it eliminates the public's ability to voice their concerns, because they always had to figure out when it was going on an agenda, and that doesn't change. They'll look and see when it's coming up.
Well, if I understand, we'll just sort of keep it as is, party in the park, parades, larger events like that will still come to the council and.
I think that's good.
Or like the car show this past weekend, would that be considered a large event?
I would think so, it
Yeah.
goes down a section of downtown. So,
And so from your point of view, how much in advance of the event do you wanna have them give this to you? What would be your suggestion?
My suggestion would be as soon as possible, so the chamber's been able to read minutes lately, and, they know what's gonna happen, you know.
I mean, it's like 3 months.
I
Too
think
much or not?
that's probably too much for some
Yeah,
people.
I mean, I think
But I
that's
mean-
too much.
I mean, a lot of times, if you're doing a car show, or you're doing party in the park, or you're doing a parade or whatever, you plan this quite a ways out, so. Just, I mean, I wouldn't put a day or a time on it, but it would be good so they can get to a council meeting, 'cause I know that. There's been some struggles here lately to get some to a council meeting, they've come in fairly late. For some events this month, so.
So we just need to encourage people that as soon as you start planning an event that will require a closure, consider getting your request in so that it can be handled and then you know that you can continue planning, because otherwise you're planning for something that you may not theoretically be able to get permission for. Yeah.
I had pushed for it earlier, yeah, after you and I had talked about needing to line up officers with some overtime or making sure we had appropriate street
Right.
equipment to block stuff off, things like that, because we were getting stuff just in the nick of time.
Right.
And it
And
was
then-
giving you problems with your force and the flow of that support staff for you. That's why I pushed even, you know, we know the 4th of July parade is gonna be X. You might as well ask for it much earlier.
And that's much appreciated because Tony and I both run into the problem where we have staff taking time off and then. Tony's guys do all the setup now for all the parades and everything else. It used to be on the police department and Dirk took that over for us. And so he brings a lot of cones out, a lot of barricades and everything else. So every time there's fireworks, every time there's a parade or whatever, you were a little short this time.
Or we're a little bit short.
Two guys ended up doing a lot of work, which they're.
My guys,
Yeah, they were tired guys with this heat this time, so, yeah, the sooner the better, it's always good. But if you put a time on it, then all of a sudden we run into, the emergency sewer or the non-emergency sewer that. Hey, I can get to this in the next, month to get your collapsed sewer taken care of, and all of a sudden they call the week before and say, hey, I've got an opening on Thursday, can we do it then? So, the sooner the better.
Sometimes the sewer, they don't have time.
Yeah.
It's flooded, we gotta do it now.
I think like Phoebe said, if you wanna close the street, you wanna know if you can close that street before you start
Right.
planning your event and then find, oh, no, you can't do that.
I guess to me, when you talk about plug sewers and water lines and things, that's two totally different deals.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, one's an emergency and one's, we're planning an event, you know. That shouldn't even be in the same realm, but that's just me.
Yeah. Any further discussion here? So we're gonna take number 5 off the list.
Yeah, and
We're not gonna
disclaimer at the bottom.
notify all affected property owners. We figure if it's a big enough event that it's gonna affect the property owners, they're probably gonna find out about it, but not at a council meeting. But it'll be far enough in advance that if somebody has a concern, they can come to the council and express their concern about that street closing.
Absolutely.
And I think people will find out about it, because even those quick ones, like, oh, hey, this road is gonna be closed today for work, like, I see that on social media. I think that the city does a good job of that, so I think if I'm seeing those, they're quick, people will see, I would hope that people will see, you know, bigger ones in advance and know that, like, hey, I wanna come and voice a concern.
Thank you for your.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we'll go on to the pedestrian bridge bollards. Elaine?
That one I had talked to Tony about here recently, just because I had some people approach me that, got into doing some bicycling around town and they're called cat cycles, just a brand name, or, brand type bike, but 2 wheels up front, 1 in the back, kind of a recumbent type bike.
Yes.
And they said, you know, it's really nice trail and everything, but we get over there to the new walking bridge. And we can get on at the east side, but we can't get off on the west side or can't get on the west side. You know, and I've just put up with those bollards for, you know, as long as I've been riding bikes and running and everything, and I hadn't really thought about it. And I said, you know, I said, we put those up for a reason when that bridge was put up, you know, in hope of keeping people off of there with motorcycles, ATVs, snowmobiles, you know, whatever it was. You can't get a car on there, not a full-size car anyway, you can't make that corner on the west end, but just to keep all the other junk off. But I said, I think it's probably time that we revisit that, and so that's what I called Tony about, just that, hey, is there something, you know, can you look at that, and at least bring it to the council and. You know, it's, and I don't, maybe we shouldn't do anything, but I'm just thinking. When we did put that bridge up and did put some of the bollards up, we did take a bollard out on the east end to make it more accessible.
Yes.
And I haven't really heard anything since then about anyone having problems at the west end until this, but. I know those kind of bikes, and I know you're not gonna make that corner down there, and you can't get through those bollards, so. So anyway, that's why it's here.
No, I was glad you brought that, because when I saw the picture, I'm like, yeah, I've always thought that those two bollards are oddly close together, and it just doesn't seem like it's really easy to pass through. I can even imagine with probably some kind of wide strollers and things like that, you're gonna be haggling your way through there. I would like to still see at least one bollard there. So for me, that option number 4, and I know that. I always say this, it's the middle school teacher in me, right? Kids are gonna try to do the most possible. And so even though there's that 90-degree turn, somebody's gonna say, what's the biggest thing I can get on? You know, that's my mindset, but, maybe it says more about me than the students I work with, I don't know. So I would like to still see at least one bollard there, and, you know, for me, like, option 3, just removing one. And then as long as one bollard is keeping people from trying whatever they can, then that's a low cost solution. You know, for me, that's my opinion.
I kind of like the purpose that the bollard serves. I was a little bit concerned why the west edge had the 2 bollards so close together with a 90-degree turn. The issue at hand, I think we still have issue where we have inappropriate vehicles either on the walking trail, the west, bike trail. I think by, just my personal opinion, I think by removing them, we're opening up something we don't want, even with a 90-degree turn. But I do understand the concern that we do have a lot of bicyclists in the community. And the west side, the west approach is not conducive to that. Was there a reason why the bollards on the west end were so close together and not matching on the east end?
These 10 ones were originally, but we took out the middle one.
Right,
Yeah.
the original east end had 3 bollards.
Yeah, there were 3 that you can see where the plate is for the
Oh, I
arrow
see.
between the other 2. But motorized wheelchairs could not get through that when there was 3 there, so we took out the middle one so that motorized wheelchairs could get through.
My initial concern was that the west end was gonna be not ADA compliant, but when I measured it, it is, barely, but it is.
That was
That-
gonna be my question.
Yeah, that was the issue, that's why one was taken out on the east end, because you could get on and off in a wheelchair in the west end the way they were. But not at the east end, so that's why one was removed at the east end.
Okay.
Makes
But-
sense.
Yeah, I don't know, to me, I wondered if we could take out the furthest west one on the west end. And leave that one to the inside edge of the corner. Because most of the people in the Tuesday night group on 2 wheels cut through between that bollard and the corner and can get through there. But hopefully that other one would allow a somewhat larger bicycle to make that corner, I hope.
Mhm.
I think it'd be good to get, those folks down there that have those bikes and say, hey, we wanna do some measuring here, can you bring your bike down so we can see what it would take to make a corner down?
I did see a gentleman that was riding a recumbent bike and I flagged him down and I told him what we were talking about. And I asked him, I said, what would you think if we put one down at the base? Down there, he goes, oh, no, don't do that. 'Cause he said that the incline, he said, I don't wanna have to see that bottom of the hill. And he said his bike worked just fine. He could drive his bike on it, but because it was a single wheel in the front, 2 in the back. And he could make it, but he says, I know the one you're talking about. I know the gentleman. He said, yeah, that one will not fit. So.
I think take it out one and see
That
we have a
try it.
if we have a problem that all of a sudden there's all these band vehicles on there, then we'll put it back up. But
Right,
let's try one and see what happens.
I've never had the bollards off. How tall is the stub underneath it?
We'll need a board.
Does that do it now?
I really like the fact we're looking at improving the walkability and the exercisability of the community. I think
Yeah.
the bridge itself is beautiful. I think this is a nice step, and having been around large baby strollers recently.
Yeah.
Takes a massive amount of
Mhm.
space too, so this will be a great improvement for that. And if it doesn't work, we can go back.
Yeah.
So we're talking just taking
Take one out.
Make that, you could even make.
I think that sounds like the plan. Try that, Tony, and see what the,
Yeah, if you wanna give me that gentleman's phone number,
Yeah.
I can meet with him and just say, hey, which one do you think works better?
Yeah,
Yeah, perfect.
told them.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
That's a pretty proactive approach to resolving a situation.
Okay.
I like that.
Thank you for your time.
yeah,
I appreciate it.
all right. Council member resignation and replacement processes, you all aware, Councilman Starr is going to be resigned as of July 30th or 31st, that's it. One of those two.
Yeah.
And so, Brittany has sent out all the different, requirements of what you do to fill a vacancy. We do have to do something within 60 days of when the vacancy occurred. Because we have an election coming up in November. I guess my opinion would be we should just appoint somebody rather than having an election, because by the time we get to an election, it's probably gonna be almost September. Then you have an election in September and a new election and 6 weeks later, which makes no sense at all, especially when you look at the cost of an election.
Special.
Yeah, special election, yeah. So if we go with the election route, we're gonna be having an election and then another election for the same seat 6 weeks later, which makes zero sense to me.
And it's just 60 days. The person would need to be appointed within 60 days after the vacancy occurs, so 60 days starts August 1st. And then they would just serve to the November 4th election. That, whoever wins that seat or that to fill a vacancy seat at that election would start right after the canvassing of the votes. So the auditor's office thought within the next week or so, that person would take office through the end of Keith's term, which is 12/31 of 27. So, and then they would be back on the normal, for the November part.
And so, at that point in November, you know, we appoint someone to fill the vacancy, and then in November, anybody can run to fill that vacancy, correct? So it just saves the city the money of having to hold a special election, because even if we held a special election, they would still have to be on the ballot in November to fill the vacancy, correct? Okay, I just want to make sure that that's really clear to everybody. Holding a special election does not mean that that person then is really fully elected. It's like, it would almost be more like a primary situation. They're still gonna have to get elected in November. Okay,
Yes.
it's not really a primary, but
The appointment process, though, I mean, the appointment process that the county just went through, do we follow the same procedure or not?
Very similar,
And
yes.
who would be that? What would that procedure be?
Basically, it's up to you on how you decide to appoint. Multiple towns do it multiple different ways. Some decide to take like an application per se of who's interested. Others, just that they know of somebody that would like to be on and they appoint them for that time. It's totally up to you guys on how you do that. It just needs to be done within that 60 days.
and
Well,
so,
The filling vacancy by appointment, here, to me, lays it out
Yeah.
right in that first page, pretty clear what
yeah,
the process is.
Yeah, but I think his question is, how does that candidate apply? And who makes the decision of, if you have 3 people apply that want that temporary position, who's gonna make that decision? Is it a council decision? Is it a small group decision that is the personnel committee decision who then comes to council for recommendation? I think you're asking, what is the process?
Correct.
Yeah.
and it's
To me,
whatever we decide.
I mean, it's just, to me, it looks like it's a council decision.
It is.
Right.
fully
So
council
it's a
decision.
council decision
they apply, the council reviews the applications, and the council decides who's gonna fill the vacancy. And pretty straightforward to me, but that's, unless I'm missing.
The way I've done it in the past is, there's not like an application, but you publicize something and say, if you're interested, contact the city clerk by this date, and then you see who's all there, and then you guys deliberate and decide amongst council who to.
Sometimes they have them fill out like a questionnaire, like why do you
could.
wanna serve? Things like that. You don't have to, but that's what I've seen too. So, just so you can kind of weed through that. So.
I think it'd be good to get Brad's input on it as well, just to make sure that something out of the weeds that none of us are thinking about.
Right.
Yeah, and I was planning on just sending him an email. He's back as of Friday, so I thought I would update him.
And I think, again, since this person's gonna be up for election again 8 weeks later, or whatever the time, I would not make it a real major application process that you have to fill out a 3-page form and write an essay and all that stuff. I think that's a little overkill.
Yeah, because 60 days is essentially, if the vacancy it says here would begin August 1, then we would have to just have somebody in that position no later than, like I said, basically the end of
End
September.
of September, yeah.
Yeah, so
We don't have to wait till the end of September.
we don't have to, yeah,
Right, but
I'm just saying
that's
that's the,
By that.
Yeah,
date.
by that time, yeah. But if we could, I mean, I would hope that we start this process soon. So we don't have a vacancy for 2 months, for
Yeah.
60 days. I like to have that vacancy filled in a few weeks rather than a few months.
That'd be nice to have it filled by the end of August, for sure,
Yeah,
at the latest.
yeah, I agree. Yep,
What if aim was to have this on, for Monday night's meeting for you guys to make a decision that you for sure want to appoint, and then that process can get started. Then the publication can be made. All of
Yeah.
that.
But within that publication, do I call City Hall and maybe this is for Monday's discussion, but do I call City Hall and say, yeah, I'm interested, or, you know, do we formulate a 5-question, why do you want to be on city council, what, you know, and have them fill that out, just so we know who they are, instead of, we get some sort of idea who they are, maybe they're no. Maybe they're not.
I don't think it's a bad idea to have a very short questionnaire so that if we do get more than 1 or 2 people who say they would want to do it, that we do know, we have a point of reference for our discussions on who we would choose to appoint.
Even if it was as simple as name, reason for wanting to serve, and any past experience serving on any boards or committees.
Yeah.
Something.
something
Yeah,
pretty simple.
3 simple.
Just, real simple stuff. 'cause it's-
You could just do it
And the address,
paper.
rural route,
Well, yeah.
rural route 3.
Make sure they're.
Doesn't cut it.
There's the, yeah,
I mean, I could have paper forms, but I could also do a Google form for it easily.
Yeah.
To email out to the person.
Maybe we can't make a decision tonight, that'd be where I'd be.
that,
And I think we can make it as kind of like, just like you said, something, so that on Monday, we don't have to go through the same discussion again. We kind of know that Brittany can kind of come up with a form between now and then and send it out, and we can say, yeah, this looks good.
that way
or
we're approving the actual question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry
just-
to put us into the spot. If I were to make a suggestion, I would put the legal requirements for that position as well.
Which are,
I don't know that. The supervisors had 60 days that they had to live within the jurisdiction on there.
Yeah.
Things like that, if those are in fact requirements for this position. So I don't know if there's any, but that would be the place to put them, so you don't appoint somebody who can't serve because of a logistical issue.
good point.
Yeah, I'll check with the auditor's office to see what things.
That doesn't preclude anybody that, if you know somebody that might be interested, just say, give them a heads up, and
Yes,
somebody that you think might be good, I mean.
yeah. And encourage someone to fill out the form.
Mhm.
All right. Everybody okay on that issue? Next is discussion of the position profile and details of city administrator search and I think, Brent had sent us some information on an updated profile, some updated dates. Brittany, do you have any more you want to add to that, or just, I guess, anybody else have anything, but Brittany can go first.
Well, Mayor has gone through, at least for the profile right away, and, kind of made a few edits. It's not on this, cause I had already uploaded this ahead of time, but taking out Winnebago, out of there.
Just a, one said after rather than, it was just a.
Yes, it said, the library director reports directly to the library board with all other department heads reporting to the city
It said
administrator.
with all after department heads, so just a kind of a typo.
The regular meetings are taped for airing. It said on local public access network, and we're gonna put our actual YouTube channel, title on there. Otherwise,
Last one was for date of hire, they said late November, I think we should just put November.
Yeah.
page 10.
Yeah. That way, if we get something, things go quicker, we can do it quicker, so, but I think we just put November rather than late November would be better.
I had a question under physical requirements. I feel like personnel actually discussed this when we were posting city clerk, the one that says must be cited. Are we in compliance with requiring site? And honestly, is it a requirement? Because if you're an adult in the world who has a site limitation, you are going to be competent at, you've had accommodations, you've figured all that out. So can we even legally say you have to be cited as a physical requirement? Have to.
Good point.
I feel like we discussed that as a personnel, and I don't know if we did come to a conclusion or if this is just still a holdover from before, and I don't remember what decision we made.
This probably maybe their boilerplate as opposed to our
I
boilerplate.
thought he said last time it was what we had used with.
Okay.
From what Steve had said, he does not have an actual job description, so I wasn't sure where this even came from.
Oh, okay.
Cause the only thing we have in what Steve had given me was the actual city administrator ordinance. And we even looked in his file and went back, Jenny and I did, and could not find an actual job description, so I'm not sure.
Mr. Henson should be able to tell us where he got the information.
Well, he had said from us.
I know,
Yeah.
that he should be able to
Yeah.
produce that then.
But
Show.
even no matter where it came from, I guess I would agree with Phoebe. I don't know what that needs to be. I don't think that should be part of the requirements.
Yeah.
I would, just got in a conversation on that summer conference about, county attorney who's blind that does just fine, so.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be any more stringent than what a county attorney would be.
right. I just don't think it's a requirement of the job. I
Yeah,
think that if you're blind, it does not mean you cannot do this job. So I would suggest that we just have that one.
I'd also, the ability to lift 25 pounds, I don't see why that needs to be part of the equation as well.
I honestly think it probably should, just moving boxes, anything like
Yeah,
that,
but
you know.
you could
it's-
always designate that to another staff member to move boxes for an administrative position. I don't see that, why that needs to be.
It's just if they don't and something were to happen, then we can be held liable.
Yeah, but we also can be held liable, according to ADA,
Mhm.
if we have, person with a disability that can't lift 25 pounds, they're still very qualified to be a city administrator. And I don't know that we really need to have that in there.
Well, we're kind of starting to get down a slippery slope, because if you look at the physical requirements on
Yeah.
down there, must be insurable, must be able to hear, must be able to communicate,
Well, it's just the same one you're talking about, Phil. Let me turn that back over. Intermittent periods of standing and walking, or if somebody's confined to a wheelchair.
Exactly, they still could do the job.
Yeah, I think this is
Yeah.
one that we probably need to get Brad to take a look at it, but.
Yeah.
Must be able to hear a normal conversation or.
Without hearing aids.
I can't qualify there.
I was gonna say, how.
can with.
Mayor, I didn't want to say it, but I mean, he's got the hearing aids, but we've all seen him do this occasionally too, right? So like.
I think this is a better discussion to have, Brad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fine.
I'll
last time.
send this to him so he can have some time to review, hopefully, I know he's gonna be swamped Friday and Monday, but hopefully so.
But I think he wasn't gonna send this out for a couple weeks anyway, was he,
He,
Brent?
no, he wants this by Tuesday morning so he can send that out.
Yeah.
That's his requirement,
And,
so.
you know, for me, I think there's a lot of these things that if a quick decision is made, I'm willing to have them removed, because I do think that you can intermittent period, like. Yeah, you know, if someone's in a wheelchair, they're not gonna be standing or walking, but they can still do their job. You know, they might be able to lift, carry, push, or pull objects. The weight might depend on, you know, what their ability is or how they've learned to adapt. So I just think that there are things that are maybe antiquated.
And I just don't think that's an essential, you know, essential function of a city administrator is to
Right.
push, pull, lift, carry. So I just don't think that needs to be in there at all.
So, yeah, I'd like to
I
hear
mean,
Brad.
being bondable,
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
yeah, exactly, something like that.
But able to run a 100-meter dash in under 12 seconds isn't really a requirement.
And we do require a pre-employment physical, that is one of our requirements of all employees.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have lifted 25 pounds yesterday, but my chiropractor fixed me up last night and I could lift it today.
Today.
Okay, so we will send that to, we will tell Brent that we're gonna have our attorney look over those things.
I have it on the agenda for Monday for you guys to officially approve final, so it can go out,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
And then are you all okay with the search schedule? Those dates and all of that?
Especially you travelers.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
No, not a problem at all.
I know I tried to make sure I told him up front what the whole deal was, and it was kind of,
And I've gone ahead and requested September 10th off for those virtual interviews, so that way, no matter when they're scheduled during the day, hopefully they'll know I'm gone, sub or not, so it'll be fine.
And then I would just like a little direction on who you would like to include in on the finalist interviews. Brent wants to do the 3 different groups. Do you want department heads, anybody from the public, anything like that? Because I would like to know just to get them the schedule ahead of time, so. You don't have to make obviously that decision tonight, but just to be thinking about that, so.
I'm just gonna throw this out since you bring that up. I know in the past, there's always been citizens department and that everybody you just mentioned's been involved. But it was kind of a little different format than what he presented, but I don't remember how the. You know, department heads, I think, should be involved, but as far as public. You know, in my head, I'm thinking, what if every person on the council and the mayor contacts, you know, 2 individuals or something and ask them to serve on, or however many we need.
And I asked
I don't
Brent
know.
too, and I haven't heard back from him on a total number, so.
I've seen when they've done citizens, it's been like the school superintendent or the hospital CEO or similar positions in town that you're gonna be working with often. Those sort of people and not just, random.
Right.
And you have also said that some of the places you've been didn't have any public interviews. The public interview was the night of the reception, and then the council people just kind of said, hey, Bill, what'd you think about those 3 guys? As opposed to having them be on
on the internet.
a specific interview.
But actually, most of the time when I've done it, it's been like that, where it was a social event
So like.
kind of situation.
Yeah, Friday night thing.
And not in the actual interviews, because, well, you realize how tough it was to get all you guys scheduled, you try to add 5, 6 more people, it gets tougher all the time, so.
And then his suggestion, and I think Dan said he would agree, is to have those interviews with some council members, some department heads, and some public, all of this in one group, then have another group that's, as opposed to the council having one interview, the department heads having one interview. Cause I know with Steve, I think we did it that way, cause I was part of the public. I wasn't on the council, and I remember the public had an interview with Steve. I think some of the previous ones we've done where it's just been at the reception, we didn't have public interviews.
I think that's what Tom's was, if I remember right.
I think maybe all three of the other ones might have been. But and we'd have to, I think we have to work with Henson Group to say, cause I hate to have three different interview groups asking the candidate the exact same question 3 times. But on the other hand, if you're in one interview and Phoebe's in another and Philip's in another, you wanna hear the question, you wanna hear I answer your question, you know, you don't wanna be blind on, oh, what, Dwayne, what did you say about that? So I think we have to figure out how we wanna do those interviews, not tonight, obviously, but at some point, what's the best way to get all of us the same information?
And that can be decided later in the process. I
Right,
reckon.
right.
As you get to the finalists, you can decide that, but, yeah, my only suggestion was, and Brent said this the other night, was to mix up those groups, because we were hiring, not that long ago, 6 months ago, we were hiring a finance director, and we had an HR person in Spencer. She had set it up where the department heads had one group and the council had another group, and we were interviewing 2 people and we split. Council loved one of them and the department heads loved the other, and we ended up bringing them both back in for a second interview, and we ended up selecting one of those, and then she turned down the job, so we still didn't. It was a complete waste of time, but.
All right, you got enough information to
Yep, thank you.
Brent about and talk to Brad about. Right. Dan, anything for your report tonight?
No, I been basically reading through stuff. I've dug up the goal setting and some of that stuff, and I had to ask Steve last week where some of it was, but I ended up finding some of that and read through it, and that's kind of what I'm doing. And I attended the meeting with the pipeline people this morning, and we've done a couple with the railroad situation, so that's kind of what I've been up to, is just trying to get my feet on the ground and, you know, meeting people like I did today at the economic development. I met for a mid-afternoon lunch with the economic development CEO too yesterday, so we talked over what that was all about, so I had some idea going in what to expect, but so just kind of doing that sort of thing for now.
Brittany, John, do you guys have anything to report?
And just report again, the front desk is not up and running yet, no online payment portal. They tried to run it over the weekend, the tech guy got up every hour to check it, and it ran through like 7 or 7:30 AM Monday morning and then stopped on him. So it's fully on G-Works, it's on their end, he's going back to their developers to see what the issue is. But I was hoping August 1st implementation, staff trained and ready to go, and that is not looking.
I'm just gonna throw this out here. Is it time to get Brad involved in this whole thing? I mean, you know, to me, it sounds like it's getting close that we need to start talking about some remuneration here, because they're not meeting guidelines. Meeting time, you know, times established to get this thing up and going. I'm just throwing it out there,
I echo your same comments.
you know.
I mean, the one thing I will say is this is a statewide issue. We're not the only ones having this issue with this
Well,
company.
but it's this company's problems, not really our problem, it's their problem. They came in, sold us a bill of goods, and now they can't deliver, so. And usually the first one that tries to hold them accountable gets a little more action than somebody that just sits back and does nothing, but I'm just throwing it out there.
And I mean, before it was a Forte issue, our payment processor, now that it's all going, and now it's a software, G-Works.
The tech support that was working on it over the weekend, is that somebody with G-Works?
It was G-Works, and then he was in contact with Eric Merritt from Merritt Computer, in those times too. So Eric made sure that the computer was staying on and everything was ready and all of that, and so because they were trying to pull all of our utility accounts. Because they obviously can't do it during the day without us being closed, so it has to be done overnight. And this was I believe the third time they had tried to pull. Before it had timed out overnight for some odd reason, so then this time he said, we're gonna do it on a weekend, he's gonna wake up and check it every hour. So, but besides that, the street department was awesome and got our drop box moved today, it's perfect over there. We've got it out on social media, some signs hung up, there is a sign out here too that Tony put up for us. That says that Dropbox has been moved to 507 Clark. We're gonna have it announced on the radio and some other things too, just to try to get it out to everybody that we can, so. But yeah, and there is people who currently have ACH are okay, that is still working, it's being pulled, but no one new can sign up for ACH, so that's what we were hoping, since that, they couldn't be online, we could get them all signed up for ACH, and then it wouldn't be a big deal. But since we're in that transition, they are not allowing us to sign up anybody new for ACH, because anyone who is already on ACH, once we get over to front desk, everyone's gonna have to make a new account. So they're all gonna be getting letters in the mail, I know, it's not gonna be easy, it's going to be a major headache for everyone involved, but once that's up and going, I've used front desk, that's what I had in Greenfield, and it's great. They can do their auto pay right on there with a click of a button, they can pay with debit, credit, anything. It's all super user friendly too, so it's just getting to that point.
This is not a city issue right now.
It
It's
is
nothing we're doing on our end. It is the software,
It is.
the program itself.
It is full software program itself, and even if everyone's like, we'll switch to something different, that implementation, we're looking 6 to 12 months out on something like that, at minimum.
And they're all, you have problems with any one of them.
Exactly.
I've said every time last couple of jobs, I'm not switching software while I'm here, because it's like, it's every time literally like that. And if you went to a new company, it'd be starting over exactly the same thing, so I don't.
Correct. And it's not like, I mean, we want this to happen just as much as citizens, because it is a major headache. I deal with this all day long, and then my stuff later at night, my day to day. So just because I'm trying to help staff out front, and then we were having terminal issues, and it's just.
Yeah, I guess one of the reasons I throw out Brad's name is because, Dan, just sitting here new, you're relatively new, Steve's gone. Steve was the one that kind of really had all the contacts with these guys. I'm just thinking maybe it's let Brad see if it'd be anything.
I'm okay with that, I just don't know what that's gonna give us.
Yeah, but
And Jenny's been there, she's very close with Chris Foley, our G-Works contact, and he is on it as well, as much as he can with his guys. He got us in touch with Cody, who we're working with now. So, I mean, they are trying, it's just moving to the cloud has been their issue, and this is fully cloud-based.
Every single ACH person has to re-enter.
Yeah.
That's not really acceptable. As a program, I think we need to step up and say to them, that's not okay. We've got all the information on ACHs.
And we would just have to get their permission, I believe, to re-enter that. And, the issues that they were coming up with in the past has been, people wanna change, it's different bank requirements, all of that. So it is something that we can help people do, for sure, on our end. But it's just, most would prefer to just go on and get it set up, then they know how to work their account, all of that as well.
I
So-
don't really wanna go on and learn how to be a secretary for the city. What I want the city to do is take my ACH that's worked for the last 30 years, move it over seamlessly, and accomplish this. That's really my goal on this one. Because
Okay, now we're starting to get to the Brad
Yeah,
point where he
yeah.
says, we're doing too much discussion, is carrying this as information only, so.
And I'm pretty sure that you can't do that legally anyway, when, you're making a change in the account. I don't believe that we can legally as a city take that account information and move it from one place to the
We
next.
have to have a form
Yeah,
signed,
yeah.
banks require it through the Federal Reserve, that we would have to have a form signed ahead of time to do that.
All right, anything else? Brittany, for your
I hope not.
list? All right, anybody else with any board or commission or committee reports?
Holding one thing real quick from Parks and Rec tonight. So the master park plan is moving forward. They're gonna kind of focus on the schedule of updates. Forget what it was actually called, that part of the plan. That's what they're gonna focus on. The inclusive playground at Sportsman's will have an official dedication on July 25th at 6 p.m. Light refreshments will be served. So come on in. There you go.
Can you say that date again? I'm sorry.
July 25th, 6 p.m.
Friday.
It's a Friday.
Any update on the mural at the YMCA?
Oh, it's going well. Yeah, whenever I talk about this, I'm saying, I'm speaking about this not as the mayor, but as a committee member. But we had some little bit of issues at the beginning as far as finding a lift that worked, but we resolved all that stuff, and I think he's happy with the way things are going. He got a day in of painting today, which yesterday we wouldn't have guessed because the forecast was for rain.
Yeah.
So he thought it would be about a 10 to 14 day process, so he's been here 5 days, so I think probably at least through the weekend, he will still be here, but I think he's pleased with the direction it's going. It's worked out really well with the YMCA. He's got a good relationship with them. As a matter of fact, Lance, the lift we ended up getting was one you had to pull. He couldn't just drive it. So Lance at the YMCA brought his, I said, hey, Lance, can you move this for us? Sure. So it's worked out really well.
Yeah, great, great.
He was working on the H today, so.
Yes.
So, there we go.
He's got all the background. Now he's.
Yeah, I've seen the background.
The letters take a little more because they're more detailed, but he's got the C done and he's working on the H when I drove here tonight, so.
Yeah. Great.
Anybody else? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for your time.